is Kenya racist? And I tell them, yes, it is. And Kenya is racist because it discriminates against its own. And I am so very aware that I am privileged. I am so aware that I get favors. I'm so aware that there are things I was able to achieve simply because of the color of my skin.
So guys, welcome to this channel. My name is Isaac Wabomba, and this channel is all about African news, it's all about African updates. And today we want to talk about racism, especially during this time, or rather this season, whereby most of us we did the application for the DV lottery, that is back in November 2024, and now the results are about to come out in the next few weeks. So these the information contained in this session is basically an eye-opener to you of what is expected of you, and to avoid you getting shocked once you get to those states. You know, some of us in Africa, we assume that everything on the other end might, or rather seems to be heavenly. But in one or the other, we need to prepare ourselves psychologically. So yeah, the question for today is, are Kenyans racist?
Yes, it is. And Kenya is racist because it discriminates against its own. And I am so very aware that I am privileged. I am so aware that I get favors. I'm so aware that there are things I was able to achieve simply because of the color of my skin.
And here's the thing that you're saying. It's not by people with the same skin color as you.
No.
It is Kenyans, blacks,
Yes.
being prejudiced to their own.
Yes.
And choosing somebody else because in their minds, they believe that person is better because of their skin color.
Correct.
That is the height of the effect of colonialism.
Absolutely.
That is the epitome of it, where you think you're lesser than other people. You yourself believe somebody else is better on no other basis but on the skin color.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I was clearly aware that I was not the best candidate for that position. I just knew it's because they need somebody who looks like me.
So yeah, as you can see, according to her explanation, she says she thought she's not that much qualified to meet the specification which were required as per this company which she had applied for this job. But at the end of the day, she ended up getting this job because they thought because she's white, so that means she is perfectly suitable for this particular role in the organization.
I had held 2 positions already where, putting hand to heart, those jobs I got because of my skin.
Oh.
Because, and you know, very often when I go to Estonia or any other places, people ask me, is Kenya racist?
So let me give an example of a case scenario. The other day I visited, I don't want to mention this particular hotel, which is situated in Karen, Nairobi. Yeah, I don't want to mention the name of this organization, but I wanted us to learn something from this. So I went to this particular hotel. It was around 1 somewhere there. So because we had some 1, 2, 3 things that we were doing around there, and I had decided now that I need to refuel myself. I need to top up something because at the end of the day, the sugar levels were going down. Yeah, so I decided to visit this hotel there so that I can, yeah, when I went there, I met I mean, when I visited this, or rather, when I went to this hotel, the white people were so many there as compared to the African. So when I went there, I looked for a table where I settled down. So according to me, I was expecting to meet a representative, be it a waiter or the manager or whatever who is in charge of welcoming the visitors to this particular restaurant. So I sat there for like 10 minutes. I couldn't see anyone who is trying to come and approach me just to ask me what I would like to take. So I was patient enough because I knew, yeah, maybe they could be busy trying to, because I was seeing the waiters were on these other tables where the white people were sitting, and yeah, so myself was just sitting there waiting to see who will come to attend to me. So 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, 20 minutes. On the 20th minute, I saw some other guests walking into the hotel. Those guests, guess what? They're still not African. They're not blacks. They're the white people. So I decided, but yeah, they are the white people. And shockingly, the waiters who were around, they went straight to welcome them to that restaurant. Mind you, I'm seated there, I'm waiting. I do not know what happens. So when you come to this particular restaurant, do I need to go direct to where I'm supposed to be served, or do I sit at the table to wait on who will give, or who will try to direct me on what to do, on what's next? So they welcomed in the white people. I saw they were bringing the menus to them, and I'm seated there. Does it, yeah, my fellow Kenyans, for like let's try to be real. Let's be real. Is it that those people, are they better than us now that they're white? Are they smart more than we do? You see, it is the same case. I have always lived on this planet knowing your home is your best place. The best place ever to sit. I thought we will be considerate. I thought we'll be more considerate to ourselves as compared to them, because the same thing, when we visit their place, we are treated the same. Yeah? Anyway.
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States.
Racism is a chronic disease. And if we do not treat this disease at its early stages, then in the future, we will not have any cure. We will not have any medicine that this particular disease will have to respond to.
Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other. Before we figured out there were other people to kill, we just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude, no more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon, the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed.
In the case right now, let me give you an example of the other day. I was watching online that is on TikTok. There's this Indian clip that has been trending that we have the black Indian and also we have the white Indians. So, and I'm told, according to the history, the black Indians came into Africa as a result of railway construction. So those ones, at the end of the day, men and women during that mingling and whatever, the results came out, and that's how they came into existence. In other words, I'm trying to say there is no better being. We are all equal. So when you try to inferiorate your friend, you're trying to inferiorate your brother, like in one or the other, it doesn't make sense. Let's listen to this lady who gives us deep insight on the same.
But what I want to talk about in this specific video is Indian people and anti-Black racism specifically. So whether this is within the country of India, or whether this is when Indian people immigrate to any part of the world, whether it be on the African continent, in North America, South America, wherever, Indian people have, and again, I'm not saying every single Indian person, but I'm talking about Indian people generally, our society, our culture, the belief systems that Indian people hold, etc. Indian people are extremely, extremely racist, especially towards Black people. And if you take a Black person who has been around Indian people for any period of time, Black people pick up on this. It's something that is, this is not a secret. Whether you're talking to, say African students who study in India, which there are African students who are there, or whether you're talking about, say, Kenyans. There's a large population of Kenya that are Indian people that have immigrated to that country, or South Africa, or Canada, or, the United States, whatever. But Black people pick up on Indian people's racism because it is quite apparent. It's something that is there. It's obvious.
Yes, and you have listened to her giving you the breakdown, and she says, at the end of the day, if we proceed with this kind of the racism thing, it might end up resulting into World War III. Because at the end of the day, when I am in Kenya, but there's my brother in India whom I would not like it, or rather I would not prefer seeing someone mistreating him from the other side. Also, the Indian people, they have their brothers in Kenya. They would not like to see me mistreating their brother. Same case to Spain, Germany, and all those other countries. Yeah? So, to avoid this hatred, we need to treat all of us, or rather, we need to treat each other fair.
So I'm just going to give you an example of me, my family, and the Indian people in South Africa. When I grew up there, I spent the first 12 years of my life under apartheid. So we had servants, maids, cooks, gardeners, etc. And all of these people were Africans. They were Black people. And all of the Indians in South Africa had servants. Okay, they were all Black. Now, how were these servants treated? They were treated as subhuman. They were not considered to be human beings with feelings. They drank out of different cups. So Indian people would not share their table with the servants, who were an integral part of their household. They took care of their children. They drove them everywhere. They cooked for them. But they had to eat off of separate dishes. They could not sit on the furniture. They, say, for example, when we left our home and we traveled, so we lived in Pietermaritzburg, we traveled to Durban on the weekends, holidays, whatever. Our maid would come with us. She was not allowed to sleep on or sit on our furniture or sleep on our furniture, so she had to sleep on the floor. These are things that all Indian people did in South Africa. And now I'm just talking about South Africa. I'm not talking about, say, when Indian people immigrate to other countries. But this is true even in first generation Indians. Because, say, if an Indian person had to marry a Black person, 9 times out of 10, that Indian person's family is going to completely disown the Indian person who married a Black person. Now, Indian people generally, they want Indian people to marry within their they want Indian people to marry other Indian people, and then they even go into like, well, they want the same caste, and they even have subcastes and all of this stuff. So but if an Indian person marries a white person, or say an Asian person, it's not considered to be as heinous of an act as if an Indian person married a Black person. So this can be tied to the caste system because, like I mentioned in my previous video, Indian people are racist towards other Indian people. And some of this is based on skin color. It's not entirely based on skin color, but there is a factor that is, that is apparent in that. So Ava DuVernay made a movie called Origin, and it's based on Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, which somebody just pointed out. And it's very difficult for me to talk about these very heavy topics in 10 minutes. So I can't cover everything, but Indian people are inherently racist as a culture and as a society. And then within that racism, there is a hierarchy. So yes, while an Indian person an Indian society might be racist towards Western people, Western culture, white people, etc. Just like Vivek Ramaswamy making that comment about how, he made all these disparaging comments about, Americans. And he was talking about white Americans, how they're not as smart and blah, blah, blah. These are not uncommon things that Indian people say within themselves. I have been privy to these conversations in whether it's, say a friend situation or families or extended families or just in my Indian community. These are very common beliefs that most all Indian people will espouse. They will say things like, well, white people have no culture. Their food is horrible. They just go on and on and on. But when it comes to Black people specifically, Indian people have extremely racist views about Black people. And it doesn't matter how nice this Black person is, how educated they might be. None of those things matter. And that's why I say that a lot of Indian people, they align themselves with a very far right-wing kind of Trump ideology. So you might take somebody from, say, America who is a Trumpster, and they espouse all these very racist views. And you could take an Indian person, and in many respects, those views are going to align because Indian people generally tend to hold very racist views. It goes back to the caste system, yes, but it also ties into other aspects because, as I pointed out before, there are the so-called untouchables in India, and Indian people are racist towards them as well. So this is all a very, these are complicated things, and I'm just trying to do my best to share these ideas because we are in terrible times right now in the United States and in the world generally. So I guess Indian people, if you guys want to come for me, come for me. I am not saying anything that's untrue. This is the truth, and I think it's kind of an open secret.
Okay, so I want you to watch this clip keenly and understand the origin of racism since the colonial times. Now you understand what this guy is trying to tell you, that there are no better beings. Back in the colonial time, the thing to do with racism was not that rampant. And as he has mentioned that, they did not refer to themselves as white people. The thing white people thing came about with this the digital knowledge, or rather the current knowledge that we have, whereby you will end up mentioning that this is white and this is black. The word white is the reason as to why we are ending up mistreating each other, thinking that the whites are better. That's why you find that when you have gone for a job interview, or rather you have gone for a job interview, and amongst yourself you have a white individual, at the end of the day you find that the white will be considered because
I had held 2 positions already where, putting hand to heart, those jobs I got because of my skin.
Oh.
the reason being white. So according to our thinking, it seems like being white, it means you are a better being. Let's continue listening to this video clip.
But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war, right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs, and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Oh, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like, how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life, because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I gotta charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right?
Yeah, superiorism. This is a word that will dominate amongst ourselves, amongst our thought, amongst our culture at the end of the day, if we do not make steps, or rather we do not take steps of making Africa a better place, if we do not take that bold step.
So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens when you go out on strike? Who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer, telling not rich white folks that their enemies are black and brown. And now we fast forward to the president. We got the president of the United States becoming president on the basis of that same rhetoric, telling not rich white folks that the reason they don't have a job is because Mexicans took them.
Could culture be a major contributing factor when it comes to racism? And I've said my answer will be yes, and at the same time it will be no. So on the yes side, there are so much cultural beliefs since the colonial times, and there are some tribes and there are some communities which tend to believe when such a cultural belief is broken, it brings a curse to the family, or it brings a curse to a generation. And now on the no side, why am I saying no? Right now everything is evolving. The world is changing. We are in a digital life and living according to some norms and beliefs. They tend to derail our growth.
Our society, our culture, the belief systems that Indian people hold, etc. Indian people are extremely, extremely racist, especially towards Black people.
As I was telling you earlier, there's a clip I was watching online which somebody was talking about racism when it comes to African people or the Black while they are in the Western countries. You know, when you go to the supermarket, you know, those people, the cashiers there, they tend to be very careful with you. They keep a watch on you because they suspect it's like you may steal something or something, you know. And, you know, this, again, she was saying, according to what she was saying, she was like, when you meet these white babies, they come to you, they try to rub on your skin. They want to know whether this is dirty or what is it exactly, you know. Yeah. So when you go there, go while you are mentally prepared. go there while you're mentally prepared, because some of us, we tend to believe that when you go there, you have gone to heaven. Man, all right, that's it for me. My name is Isaac Wabomba. I request you to keep on subscribing for more and more of African updates. Till next time, bye.